Welcome to the Office for Personal Development. Here to help you achieve all of your personal development goals.
Welcome to the Office for Personal Development. Here to help you achieve all of your personal development goals.
Welcome to the Office for Personal Development. Here to help you achieve all of
Hey everyone, welcome to another fantastic Electronic Cafe interview edition. As you know, Mark and I don't just talk to legends, which is fantastic for us both. We absolutely love that. But also, one of the main reasons we started this challenge to champion new and exciting bands. And the guys we interviewed just recently certainly are no exception. We managed to speak to the fantastic Office of Personal Development, Trevor, Deeble and Jenna. Love what they're doing, love their concepts, and also done with a slight sort of, what's the word, sense of humour in the whole thing. We had a fantastic conversation, mate, wasn't it?
It was a great conversation. I mean, it's based around their album Doing Is Thinking. They're working with a concept at the moment which is frighteningly realistic, especially to anyone that works in an office. They're really funny, but really great with it, and we want to bring their new album to your attention.
Yeah, totally. And we're part of the crew because they sent me and Mark these promo lanyards, which was just the masterstroke of genius, I thought. But so I think you were the same, mate. You're a project manager as well. I know I'm a team building coordinator, Brandon.
I'm probably CEO or something like that, probably.
Yeah, lovely guys, as Mark says, and you know, we really want you to hear this album. So should we dive in and let our wonderful EC people see what the fuss is all about?
Indeed. Everybody enjoy the Office for Personal Development.
Come in, Copenhagen. Have you got the points?
We know there's water problems.
Yes.
In your area. That all sounds really wrong, so Mark, delete that.
I was going to say, it's quite personal.
I know what you mean. I know. Don't worry. I know what you mean.
Stars can't recall if I ever loved you at all, and the wind cares not where I choose to roam, and the grass is not impressed by a single thing I know, and the rain thinks not me if I decides to fall. I only hope someday peace will take me by the hand and take me back to nowhere at all. Reflects my unrequited love. She couldn't see me way down here if she tried. In a heartbeat I drown in her inexorable tide, but another drop, obedient to a call. I only hope someday peace will take me by the hand and take me back to nowhere at all.
Hey everyone, welcome to a fantastic interview edition of the Electronic Cafe. Today we have a band that are getting a ton of deserved attention. We absolutely love them. So Trevor, Deeble, Jenna, welcome to the Electronic Cafe. It's great to have you all here. Thank you, guys. And look, we're loving the look, the image, the branding of you guys. And look, you know, we're part of the team, which is fantastic. So we're honoured. But as
your credentials, yep.
Thank you, sir. But how did you come up with this concept? Because I think it's genius.
Well, it was a lot of the songs kind of existed before,
right?
And I was trying to come up with some kind of vehicle for it, and I knew that it was going to have to be something constructed. And then the line, I think, between truth and reality kind of became much blurrier than I intended it to be. Yeah, when you zone into sort of the whole sort of company as cult thing and the whole well-being industry, I think me and my wife Hannah were driving in our camper van, and we were just leaving a folk festival where a load of the folk artists had roll-up banners up with no irony whatsoever, sort of selling themselves and their Facebook accounts and whatever, and whilst sort of wearing Hessian shirts. And I just sort of thought this is all a bit crazy. And I was completely fed up with the whole sort of marketing side of music and personality in general. And I thought, you know what, if you're going to do it in hyperdrive and make a bit of a point out of it. And kind of here we are. I mean, yeah, and as I say, the line between sort of the theatre of it and the reality of it is
You've done it really well. I mean, I've worked in offices for 30 years, and it makes me feel a bit uncomfortable how well you're doing it with the motivational stuff and the suits and the ties and you know, you've obviously got a keen eye for it. I mean, there is a duality between musicians, between, you know, their artist side or the stage side and their real life. But I think that you've probably hit the nail on the head with this concept massive.
Take a break from your expectations. It's right to never be as good as you wanna be. It takes a lifetime of dedication to achieve even mediocrity.
I think it's also all these kind of characters, all these sort of, you know, trying to sell get rich quick schemes and, you know, become a millionaire, sign up to my, you know, all of them they're all quite tragic characters, and they're all people that are faking it until they make, you know, if they were millionaires, they wouldn't be running these schemes, you know what I mean? Yeah. And they're always quite damaged people running these sort of, you know, self-help stuff. And I just see so many parallels with music, you know, how many, you know, bands pretending to be successful before they are, and everybody, you know, trying to be sort of ultra kind of motivational, when really we spend our whole time doubting what we're doing and if it's, you know, what we should be doing with our lives and so on. So I think it's quite an easy jump to make.
Jenna, I mean, going back a little bit for the three of you, Jenna, how did you guys all come together?
Well, I joined the band last. I saw an advert on Facebook.
Oh, yeah.
Traditionally, it would have been the back page of the Enemy, wouldn't it? I put in my job application via email, and I had a sort of audition, and yeah, so it was interesting. I've not joined a band like that before, so.
and Del, I mean, I know you guys wrote this album together, but and it is fantastic. I won't lie, and thank you so much for saying it as we were made up. But there's a real mix of sort of, I feel, I might be completely wrong on this, and shoot me down if I'm. There's like a real sense of hope that if you're focused in, things will be all right. And the textures are brilliant. Is this based on some of your own life experiences?
Yeah, well, obviously it's all down to me. But I think that's probably one for Trevor to answer, because he wrote the songs.
I'll gladly hand it over to.
Yeah,
I think about half of the record existed sort of because I was in folk bands before with my wife and things. So and I think I'd made a solo record after we had our kids and things. We were playing separately, and I'd made a solo sort of folk album and finished it, mastered it, and was so bored of it, just couldn't bring myself to listen to it. So I just shelved it and then embarked on this. I had a lot of principles about recording and the way things should be done, and very sort of rustic fashion. You know, music should be documents, everything should be one take, and everything should be, you know, all this kind of stuff. So I just decided to break every single musical principle that I had and do everything in the complete opposite way. And it was just completely sort of liberating. But the genesis of a lot of the songs still come from that sort of folk tradition from a first hand. Some of them were morphed, some of them had sort of extra choruses and things added once the OPD sort of thing had been created. And then there's some on the record which were created far more from the electronic tradition, in that they were created from the beats up and they were written, you know, top line after the groove and all that sort of stuff. But it's about half and half, and you can see if you can work out which songs were written the first way and which ones were written the electronic sort of process way.
You'll have nothing left to fear by the time I'm through. Together we could achieve and have it all. If only you would believe in me just a little more. Is there anything I can do to prove my love to you?
There's quite a mix of songs on there. I mean, we, especially us, when we get sent and we hear a lot of electronic music, and you either get the the very poppy electronic music, or you get the real sort of industrial sort of electronic music. You've got a mix on your album. There's some edgy tracks on the album, as well as kind of like the lighter one.
A lot of it was sort of constructed really in sort of a band sort of way, really. A lot of it wasn't because I don't really come from the electronic sort of music world as such. I think that I sort of immersed myself in it quite quickly and picked up on those themes very fast. There's an awful lot of electronic bands who their only subject matter is sort of electronic music itself. You know what I mean? It's all, which is fine. You know, all art is ultimately about art itself. You know what I mean? But it was, I think it was the merging of the different things. You know, I've been in indie bands and rock bands and obviously folk bands and things, and then coming at the electronic music thing, I don't know if I'm doing things slightly different to them or not. The thing I like about this kind of world is that everyone does things differently, and there's no right or wrong way of doing it, and everyone's got a process. And it's really interesting to talk to other people and go, so how do you do things? How's your studio plumbed in? That's a work in itself, you know, piece of engineering. And I love all that. I'm a real nerd when it comes to all that stuff. But yeah, maybe the variety on it is just because I'm not that well versed in all this stuff, really. I've always loved pop songs, and loved this sort of thing. And
Did you always have a love for electronic music as well? Because, I mean, you've touched on it a couple of times. You were in a really successful folk duo. I mean, you played the Royal Albert Hall, you supported Beth Orton, Tori Amos, you played some big shows as well as the festivals. And, okay, you got bored with it and you moved on, but was electronic music always kind of like one of your first loves, or was it kind of indie alternative and that was just the way you went because you was on your own?
Well, I think it kind of has. I think there's always been sort of hints of it in the past. For instance, I've got a really old drum machine, one of the original MPCs, the Cambridge Electronics ones, that I bought in a house clearance in Norwich on some tour we were on with our first band. And I remember them saying, what on earth are you going to want that for? And I had no idea what I was going to want it for. But I was clearly drawn to all these things. I remember when we would play at festivals and stuff, I was always going off and seeing other bands that I was interested in that everybody sort of turned their noses up at. So, yeah, I think I've always been inclined just to good songs, you know, and very often in every sort of music world, but I think particularly in the folk world, sometimes people can rely on things like skill and authenticity in these things, and they hope that one day everyone's going to wake up and think they're the new Leonard Cohen, whereas in actual fact, you're sort of just doing the same as everyone else. Whereas what I love about electronic music and sort of the more sort of alternative pop end of things is that everyone is, I think, trying to be inventive. I think you can't just show up and, two people can get on a stage holding an acoustic guitar doing ultimately the same thing, and you look for the nuances and differences of the writing and their voices and whatever. Two pop bands, if you see another pop band doing exactly what you're doing at a slightly higher level, you've got to do something different. You've got to change it up. And I think what I've liked about that and getting involved in this is that it seems far less competitive. Like the folk world and Americana world is so competitive because I think fundamentally people know we're all sort of doing the same thing here. Whereas in sort of the more electronic alternative pop kind of world, there's not really that much competition artistically because everyone has to do their own thing. I think you're far more just going, wow, they're doing something great. They're doing something great.
Cats, plots and whispers, clanging limbs, shakings of hands, smirking, murmuring, swallows, each one crying at the land. A band that looks excited, blood streaming from their eyes. But I still believe these could be the best days of our life.
In the recording process, are you guys using analog or digital or software or a bit of both? Because some of the sounds sound like classic, almost like Heaven 17 feel, but is that on analog or is it software?
Yeah, it's all recorded. It's all recorded digitally. Yeah, we've almost all the sounds on it are hardware synths though. They were plug-in synths, and then I had a good discussion with Martin where I did his podcast recently, and we were talking about this because obviously they never had to play live ever when they started out, so it was never a consideration of being able to do it on stage. Whereas for bands now, you've got no choice. You've got to go out and play to get any kind of, awareness of what you do. And so there was a moment where everything went from being sort of plug-in based synths. I thought there's no way I can possibly recreate this. So then there was that moment of trying to recreate those sounds, but on hardware synths, and that became too difficult. And then the hardware took over, and then everything was replaced. And I think that was the moment it sort of took on its real color, when you sort of limit your possibilities. You get 4 or 5 decent synths rather than having sort of endless endless software possibilities. That shaped the sound was the necessity of having to be able to do it live. And I think that focused sort of the color of, you know, the palette you choose. You're not just, you know, oh, this sounds great, let's click that from a drop-down menu. So we can't.
We've both got the same little Yamaha keyboard as well, which a lot of the sounds come from.
Yeah.
There's a little chord, wasn't it? A little microchord.
Me and Andy was in bands, and we gigged all over London and stuff, and it was kind of an indie electronic band. I was on the synthesizers and samplers and doing all the electronics and stuff, and we used to have to carry so much stuff around, like, you know, the hardware, you know, 3 synthesizers, drum machines, sequencers, you know, samplers. Whereas like now, you can have a laptop and you can have Mainstage or something, and you can have it, you know, very little there to recreate the sound. I mean, we spoke to Martin Ware 18 months ago, a couple of years ago, and he was saying that, you know, Heaven 17 didn't play live initially, but then when they did go to play live, they wasn't allowed access to any of the sounds because Virgin owned all the master tapes. So they had to beg, steal, borrow, sample where they could to try and get the sounds that they used on the record. So, you know, the reconstruction of their music was quite a task.
To make as much noise as I can, but I'm not promising things. I've got the funniest feeling.
I mean, we had a fun time, didn't we, a few months ago at an event in Hastings called Fat Tuesday, where we played 3 shows in one night, and so we did have to strip it back quite a bit from the technical aspect. We couldn't bring as many potted plants. We weren't able to bring too many accessories, but we sort of, I think we had, was it a synth each?
Yeah.
Or did I have the big synth as well? I can't remember.
Laptop, 2 synths.
Could we? So that was good fun. We can. Or it's not acoustic by any means, but we can strip it down where necessary.
Yeah. That's our next record. Next record's going to be a ukulele record or something.
When you can't figure it out and just don't understand, and have been thinking about it time and time again, your entire existence has now become past tense. Turn off your mind and it will certainly all make sense. Doing is thinking, thinking, doing is thinking, doing is thinking, doing is thinking.
So Del, there seems to be quite a little scene down in Hastings, Bexhill, you know, that sort of area. I mean,
there's a lot of really good bands around at the moment, and it's kind of like, I think everybody else spurs everybody else on. But, you know, there's like Hot Wax, Kid Capici, Borough Council, Air Cooled, obviously. And it's kind of, everyone's doing their own thing, but it's very healthy down here at the moment, the bands.
I mean, I don't know if you guys know, but there was a series of happenstance how I met Del, and I went in. I was down there with my family for just a couple of days break last year. I think it was last.
Yeah.
Was it last summer?
We did a bank holiday around the same time.
Yeah, and I went looking for a record shop. Went into Delaware, saw Del. He was playing the Air Cooled album, and I said, "What's this?" And he said, "Oh, it's a band called Air Cooled." And I said, "Oh, I'll have a copy." He said, "Oh, it's not out until Friday." So he said, "Come back tomorrow and pick it up." And I said, "Well, I'm going home tomorrow." So he said, "Oh, I'm going to the warehouse tonight. I'll pick you up a copy." So he picked me up a copy. I went in there, got it, great, posted about it, loved it, bought Andy a copy, great, everyone loved it. We interviewed James Atkin from EMF, and I was talking to James about it, and he said, "Oh yeah, Ollie was my best man at our wedding."
Yeah.
So like it kind of all tied up, and then this album came through, and it was Del from who I've been speaking to in the record shop. It was kind of like the whole scene is kind of like joined up. Keener just up the road, and the Sovereign Light Cafe is there and everything. And
they played for the shop a couple of times as well. It's
nice.
Yeah, that's kind of like, everybody seems to help each other out, which is nice.
I'm coming down, mate. I feel like I've said to him, I feel like I've missed out, so I'm coming down.
Excellent.
Listening
Time
out.
to move.
Bring some water with you. Bring
Yeah,
some-
just wait until the water comes back on.
Try, but your life is still a mess, and there are far too many things for you to ever address. It's time to polish up your winning smile and dress for success, and get out there and do whatever you can. It's always just a benefit. Simple is the benefit. Every day risk benefit.
Trevor, your voice, I mean, on some tracks, the notes you hear are so high, amazing. Are you trained? Was that just your natural talent?
Oh, it's just natural talent. I'm just gifted in that department. Yeah.
I actually had hair in the waistline once, and I was a singer, but I could never dream of those kind of notes. I mean, just
Well, when me and my wife used to get reviews sometimes, because we used to sing a lot of harmonies together, and we used to share the harmonies a lot because our voices in a similar sort of register.
yeah.
I'd often sort of say, right, Hannah, do you want the good news or the bad news? You say, right, well, the good news is they've completely slagged off your voice, and the bad news is it was actually me on the record. We'd always get this back to front,
I mean, obviously you've got an amazing scene that Mark just mentioned. Are there any new bands or artists you're loving? Because we asked that for all of our guests.
I'm listening to quite a lot of K-pop at the moment, which is all very electronic based, and enjoying it. It's fresh. Some of the time it's massively overproduced, but I kind of enjoy that. So yeah, that's what I'm listening to at the moment. How about you, Dal?
This is going to sound really pretentious, but I've been listening to a lot of Brazilian music recently, like acts like Cesar, and it's just and Rodrigo Amarante, and it's just I'm really enjoying listening to music where I can't understand the lyrics. I'm having a lot of problems with other people's lyrics at the moment, and it's really putting me off some songs. So to actually hear something and then just you get the kind of vibe from the music as opposed to the lyrics.
Yeah, and that's why I love Sigur Rós, Cocteau Twins.
Yeah, you listen to it in a different way when you can't understand the lyrics.
It's like the Kraftwerk albums, the German versions.
Yeah.
It just sounds a bit more authentic.
Yeah,
when you hear it in the German version than the English versions. But I know what you mean. I mean, you listen to music all day long, I guess, Del. So you hear a lot of there's a continual stream of new stuff that's coming up and being released, and you probably have it on in the shop.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like stopped buying. I had an incident where I lost a lot of my record collection to a damp basement, and instead of kind of like going like I'm going to have to rebuy that, I thought that was my line in the sand moment. I would only buy music that had been released in the last 3 months, and so I've just done that since probably for about the last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
So yeah, constantly. Apart from through lockdown, where I couldn't listen to music, which was really odd. But, but I'm back on it now.
What about you, Trevor? I mean, what new stuff are you listening to that you're enjoying?
I think we need to give a little shout out to the best thing I've heard in ages. We played at Goo Records. There's a Brighton-based label called Goo Records. We played it there all day at the Hope and Ruin last weekend, and there were these brilliant DJs called Slav to the Rhythm, where they only play Slavic music, like electronic Slavic music, and it was brilliant. And there was an amazing band that everything they played, I wanted to go and ask them what it was, and it got a bit embarrassing. So what's this one? What's this one? But there's a brilliant Latvian band that they told me about called it's like Zelteni Pasmieki or something like that, and it means the yellow postman. And they're around sort of in the 80s and 90s. I think they're still sort of going now a bit. It was just brilliant. Every single track was just amazing. But it's they were great. And in fact, one of the DJs, she does a solo sort of techno thing called Xylitol.
Right.
And I think by the time this goes out, we will have announced our Q2 performance review in Bexhill, and she's going to be coming and supporting us doing her Xylitol set, which sounds amazing. So yeah.
Trying to do the best they can. Somewhere our hearts they get left behind. When they have it all they can stand. So I'm resting my sail into the wind. Gonna find my place out in the road.
So there's a few dates, summer dates, but is there anything after that?
Yeah, we're putting together some shows in September. We're playing in Brighton in September, and probably the last single off the record will be out around then. So we're going to put together a bunch of shows. So we'll announce a London show. It'll be sort of late August, September sort of time. But yeah.
Do you write a batch of songs, and you've got a surplus amount of songs that will be on the next record, or will you end this campaign and then you'll go away and write the second one?
Yeah, at the moment we haven't got a big bank of songs. We've got a brand new OPD song that no one's ever heard before called Bexhill, which is going to be on the B-side to the next single, which is out in a few weeks, which is going to be Best Days of Our Lives, which is off the album. So that's the first sort of brand new OPD song that didn't come out of the album sort of batch of songs. But yeah, I mean, this time the process I think is going to be very different. Last time it was very much sort of I was in the studio and then we've created it live. But the next one, because this one took about 4 or 5 years, because it spanned COVID and all that sort of stuff. Ooh. So the next one we'll do in a much more sort of traditional album way, I think, and try and do it in a brief period of time.
There's a lot of traction on this one because, I mean, it sort of came out of the blocks firing because, I mean, Martin Ware, X Radio, there's so much music released every single week, and to get some sort of platform or some sort of traction for a new artist, a new album, it's like a brilliant endorsement for what you're doing.
I think it helps that me and Trevor have both been in bands for a long time, and so we've got contacts, so we've sort of tapped up our contacts. Dan obviously knows people as well from his past life, so that's helped. But in some ways it's also we're not 25 anymore. So I know, sorry Trevor, I know you are the youngest. So people often conflate being relevant with being young, don't they? And I think it's hard to. It's still new music. It's just not made by young people.
Yeah.
This is the problem that's happening with the industry now. I mean, obviously there's an awful lot of ageism too, and a lot of it is because it's driven by online numbers, and the sort of audiences that share things tend to be younger. Music fans that are a bit older, they buy records, but they don't go on the internet and share all the stuff that you do, so then your numbers don't go up. My nephew's band, the moment they start, bang, they've got like 3,000 Instagram followers because everybody at school goes, oh, there's a new band at school, and everybody shares it and follows it. The sort of numbers you can only dream of. But they still can't sell more than, a couple of tickets. When the industry goes off online numbers as a way of filtering the sheer volume of music that's out there, it obviously helps to have a younger fan base.
Mm.
Yeah.
And also just the expenses of trying to do it now. If you can't live at home with your parents still, you can't do 200 shows a year. In the early days, like maybe me and Hannah once did, when you could, if you sold 50 CDs a night, there was a 10 quid margin on every single copy, and you could walk out of there with 500-600 quid on quite a small show. You could play to a couple of hundred people, sell 20-30 CDs, get paid 50-75 quid. Fuel was a bit cheaper, travel lodges were cheaper, and you could still make a few hundred quid a night and then move on. And if you could do that enough, and you could work hard enough and have an agent or just do it yourself to do enough shows, and you didn't have an expensive, flat to rent, you could kind of live full time on the road and make it work and build up a fan base and all that kind of stuff. But now that's just impossible.
Slow and tall, we can see. Till out of the shadows stepped you and I. It never makes any sense to me. Some fires catch while others they die. So go and be who you want to be.
Yeah, there's a couple of occasions we was nearly signed back in the 80s and 90s, and record labels said, yeah, great, but we want you to build up your audience just a little bit more before we sort of commit. And I guess now record labels, who wants to sign a major deal anyway, but they want to know how many followers you've got. I mean, what's your social? I suppose it's a digital version of what we was doing, like as real footfall. Record people want to know what's your Instagram or what's your Facebook profile, or all these sort of things.
The old-fashioned system of we'll sign 10 bands and let 9 of them make a loss because one of them will pay for the rest, and then we'll stack those 9 and then we'll move on. So I know it's pretty brutal, and we've been involved in that churn, and we've been signed to things and dropped as the ones that cost money rather than made money. But at least you've got your shot, you've got your record out, you weren't kept on the back burner until the numbers looked good enough to even put a record out. You still got to do your thing.
Sure.
Maybe it ended prematurely, but you still got to do it, and then the system existed. But now they just can't take those kind of risks. Every band, like one big loss, one big expense, and these labels are done for. So therefore, they've got to rely on bands bringing their own ready-made audience, which is a shame because maybe even 10 years ago, if you did have a ready-made audience, you could self-release and do it yourself. Well, in that case, what do you need a label for? But now there just seems to be a lot of barriers to getting up to that next level. Be that radio, just trying to, there's no money in music journalism anymore, so people aren't writing, they're not being paid. It's not like staff writers and someone's going, hey, there's a new record, we have to cover it because. It's all people going, I want to review this because it's my friend or because the PR company, you know what I mean?
That's really sad though, I think, because, record company, part of their job was development of artists. And, they're run by accountants now, so they literally need to make a profit on everything. But, you take, say, U2 probably didn't take off until the Joshua Tree, and they had perhaps 4 albums, including the live one, to develop before they became the biggest band in the world. And a lot of acts don't get to have that progression anymore. The first album doesn't go platinum, and they get dropped, sadly. I mean, a lot of talent has been lost, I think.
I fear it's going to become a preserve of rich people, basically people from rich families, because no one else is going to be able to afford to. Well, you can't get a mortgage, you can't afford to have children, all those boring grown-up things that people eventually want to do once they've got the first part of their, partying days out of their system. It's just not possible. No. Even if we were to go up to the next level, you wonder how much money people actually make, and I don't think it's very much.
The A&R industry doesn't exist anymore. Labels just don't spend that money because it costs a lot of money and the hit rate is so low, and you've got to waste a lot of money to make money, which they just can't afford to do. So everyone gets parachuted in from the top of the business, and anything coming up from underneath, bands used to exist in the real world, and then tastemakers would go, right, if this is working here and there's this energy that's built up, okay, let's all go and live in Birmingham for 6 months and sign every metal band because there's a scene, and then it would explode into the rest of the world. But it existed as a thing.
Yeah,
like the Blitz Club or whatever it was. These things had centers of gravity where they existed in real life first, and the proving ground was in front of people. But then people had the power because the music industry was still a music industry. Radio was presented by music people, and producers were into music, and there was music on TV, not just on
Make a really good point there, mate, because that was the other reason we started. Because I said, when we were growing up, me and Mark, we were older than you guys, but Top of the Pops, Our Grey Whistle Test, The Tube, CFI Friday, all that stuff. There's more channels now than ever, but I can't see any music channels. Actually, one of Mark's best friends calls me and Mark a pair of truffle pigs for music because we try and find it. And so, when we got this, we said we've got to get you on because it's, everyone needs to hear this album. It's honestly, it's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Thank you.
Lately, I've been thinking that I am Jesus, and this time I've no reason to doubt. It's fun going up and down at the supermarket when you think that you're the son of God. No one would nobody should care for me like I.
One of our last few questions. Desert Island Disc. I know it's a really tough one because some people go, oh shit, yeah, and it'll change tomorrow. But right now, if you had one album to take to Desert Island, what would it be, all three of you?
Oh.
I know, see? And
I'd go for Prince Sign of the Times, I think.
That's a great shout.
If someone put a gun to my head and just
that's a great shout. Yeah.
Would that be the 7-album box set though, Dale?
No, definitely not. No, just as it was meant to be, as it came out. On that really thin vinyl that it originally came out on, where you hold it in the middle and it drops on both sides.
I'm going to go for something a bit more, Prince is mainstream, but I would go for the Erasure Best Of album, Hot, the first 20 hits. I've been listening to that album since I was 10. And once Vince Clarke got to have his songs sung by, Andy Bell, it went brilliantly, didn't it? Beautiful melodies, wonderful singing, just great songs.
I mean, 2 great shouts.
We spoke to Vince Clarke end of last year. We've been fortunate. We've spoken to quite a few people, but like we were both nervous. Like when you got Vince Clarke is in the waiting room, we was both thinking, shit, that's a great shout, Jenna, because that's just like a back-to-back masterclass in pop, isn't it? We grew up in Upminster, which is the next town up from Basildon. So when we were like 15, 16, like Depeche Mode were the local band. We used to see them on the train all the time and go and see them in these tiny venues up until last year, when you go and see them on these mega, Twickenham, O2, these mega things. It's crazy. So we're giving Trevor enough time now.
Trevor's like, come on, Trevor, reveal, mate.
I don't know. Maybe Remain in Light just for once in a lifetime. I think that on a desert island. Remain in Light, or possibly if I was being nostalgic, I'd probably pick a Nirvana album, because that's sort of my first big love as a teenager. So yeah, probably not Nevermind though. Probably I think I prefer In Utero. Yeah. So yeah, either that or Remain in Light. I stood next to him once, and it's like my biggest regret ever. We did a gig on the Tori Amos tour. We played 2 nights at the Beacon in New York, and he came to the show. In fact, he came to the shows both nights. And on the second night, we were stood by the merch table, and he was there with St. Vincent because it was during that album. And we'd played quite a few shows with St. Vincent over the years in various things like festivals and stuff like that. So we were sort of, in fact, we saw her play one of her first ever shows, which was in a working men's club in Middlesbrough, at Middlesbrough Music Live in about 2006-07, when she was still part of Polyphonic Spree at that point. But anyway, and so he was there with her, and we stood at the merch table, and I was just too nervous to talk to him. He was stood there in his white suit, and I was like, I just can't do it. Can't do it. And then recently, Neil Tennant walked into the Delaware when I was there, and it was my moment to make amends. Was I was so nervous about talking to Neil Tennant. It was the day after our album came out, and he just walked in. We've been trying to get a record to him for ages and ages and ages. And the day after the album launch, in fact, I was at Dell's shop, but Dell wasn't there that day. Ollie was in.
Unbelievable.
Neil Tennant walked in and went in the gallery, and I was telling Ollie, I'm going to have to talk to him. I'm going to have to approach him. And I thought of the David Byrne moment, and I thought, you know what? Even if Neil Tennant tells me to F off, that's probably even better. But he was very nice. But yeah, I still rue the day I stood right next to David Byrne for about 15 minutes and didn't say hello.
I did the same in Morrissey.
Probably
at Shepherd's Bush. He was standing next to us at the bar, and I couldn't speak to him. But a funny story as well. Me and Andy went and saw Morrissey, and when it ended, everyone was leaving the venue out the back, and there was an exit at the front. So I said to Andy, let's go out the front. And we walked through the front door, and then we was just standing in a crowd with their tour bus with Morrissey and the band. It was just me and Andy just standing there and thinking, oh shit, we'll go back the other way then. So you guys, we love the album. Thanks for giving up your evening to speak to us. We really appreciate it. You've got a lot coming up. You've got some live dates coming up. You mentioned that. You've got some brand new songs coming out. You've mentioned that.
Yeah, watch the space, really. Yeah. So the next single's out 24th of May. So we're just about to, in fact, by the time this goes out, that'll all be announced. So yeah, it's basically that. Then we're into festivals. We've got a few festivals with Truck and Tram Lines and Why Not. And then we'll do something at the end of the summer. Right. And yeah, we've got a few videos in the pipeline. Something else we like to do, even though no one watches music videos.
Yeah, the feature length film.
Yeah, musical. We're working on the musical.
I don't like to ask it, but I mean, is the concepts remaining the same, or have you got something else up your sleeve?
I reckon it's gonna have to change, innit? You know, I reckon. Yeah, I think it's gonna have to go sort of. Well, we'll see, won't we? We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, the workplace is constantly evolving, and we have to keep up with the times.
Exactly. There might be some sort of takeover or something.
I love that.
Yeah. What do they call it? A hostile takeover.
Exactly. Cheers, guys. Thanks for your time. Really appreciate it, and we'll catch up very soon.
And Jenna, I hope you get the water sorted.
Should we all get a big double thumbs up?
Yeah.
I need to try and press my record button.
Yeah, I hope you get your water cooler filled up in time.
Yeah. That's the most important
I
thing.
could actually do with that now. I really could.
We joke about it, but it's terrible. I feel for you guys, but
Yeah, we're in Bexhill. We're fine. We're going to send an aid package. We're going to send an aid package to St Leonard's.
give Bob Geldof
We
a
could do a
shout.
charity gig, maybe.
We do a charity gig tonight, and we'll.
Water aid.
I think maybe just a picture of us carrying the water cooler to St Leonard's and setting up on the seafront.
Cheers, guys. Thanks very much. Speak soon.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Speak to you soon.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Unkindness and indignation. Nothing they could ever do, nothing they could ever say.